This Thanksgiving, my entire family sat around the table I paid for, in the home I bought. Then my mom looked at me and said, "Don't make a fool of yourself like last year. Just let your brother say the prayer." I kept quiet. Until I pulled out the box they made me swear I'd never open. I once believed family meant unconditional love. Then I found out my own parents were stealing from me, and the man I trusted most was behind it all. Thanksgiving always stirred this strange cocktail of feelings for me. Warm memories clashing with a cold knot in my stomach. All the familiar smells, the laughter, the ritual of it, it should have been comforting. But in my family, tradition could cut deep. I'm Ethan, 32 now, and I've learned to keep my expectations low for holidays. It's not that I hate them, I used to adore Thanksgiving. It was my favorite day as a kid. But growing up where your achievements are treated like accidents and your sacrifices like obligations. Yeah, that grinds you down. I was never the golden child. That title belonged to my younger brother, Alex, 29. From the time we were little, he could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. He'd break a window, lie, blame me, and they'd still find a way to praise his cleverness. Me? I spilled orange juice once at 10, and I didn't hear the end of it until college. If Alex forgot homework, the teacher was unfair. If I got a B+, I wasn't trying hard enough. I used to try, I really did. I chased their approval with good grades, then by helping out, then just by staying out of trouble. But eventually, I gave up on winning. I started building my own life, far from the constant circus. I moved out at 18, worked 2 jobs through college, and forged a stable, respectable life. Nothing flashy, but good enough to buy a 4-bedroom house and sleep without rent worries. I rarely talk about money, I know how my family gets when it's involved. I learned early that flashing success only invites resentment from those who feel entitled to a piece of it. But a few years back, when my parents hit a rough patch, Dad's company downsized, Mom's hours got cut, the bills piled up. I stepped in. I didn't make a fuss, just offered to help. I covered their mortgage for months, then decided to buy them a house outright. Modest, but a clear upgrade. Clean yard, updated kitchen, plenty of space. They cried when I handed them the keys. Dad hugged me, mumbling something about being proud. Mom immediately started planning Thanksgiving dinner. I never expected a parade. I just thought, maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me. Not as a backup, not as someone lucky or obligated, but as someone who truly mattered, someone who gave. That was 3 years ago. Since then, nothing much changed. Alex still drifted in late to family events, praised for gracing us with his presence. He still borrowed money, conveniently forgetting to repay it. He'd skip holidays entirely, calling halfway through dessert with some excuse about work or traffic or his on-again, off-again girlfriend. And my parents? They hung on his every word like he was a prophet. Me? I got asked why I didn't bring pie last year. That Thanksgiving was rough. I'd offered to lead the prayer, a tradition Grandpa Daniel used to hold. I just wanted to say a few words about gratitude, maybe honor his memory. But before I could open my mouth, Mom Eleanor cut me off with a tight smile. "Let's wait for Alex," she said. "He should be the one." Never mind, he was over an hour late, texting from a bar. When he finally stumbled in, reeking of cologne and bourbon, she beamed at him like he was a returning war hero. He slurred through a half-hearted prayer, and no one batted an eye. No one cared. I remember sitting there, gripping my wine glass a little too tight, telling myself, next year, don't do this to yourself again. But I did. Because deep down, a part of me still hoped they'd come around. That maybe, just once, they'd see past the illusion and acknowledge what I'd sacrificed, what I'd built. This year, I told myself, play it cool. No expectations. Just dinner, then I'm out. I even offered to host at my place, bigger dining room, better kitchen, plenty of space. Mom declined. Insisted on having it at her home. Which, fine. Even if I paid for it, even if the deed was in my name, I didn't push. Let her have it. So, I showed up on time. Brought my famous stuffing, good wine, and a caramel apple pie from a fancy bakery I'd pre-ordered weeks in advance. Everyone was already there. My aunts, uncles, cousins, even Alex, a miracle in itself. He greeted me with a "yo, big money," and slapped my back like we were college buddies. I smiled, gritted my teeth, and vowed to just survive the evening. Dinner was, well, dinner. Mom made her usual spread. Turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce still holding the can's shape. Everyone crowded the table, laughing too loudly, talking over each other. I took my usual seat at the end, where Dad Daniel used to sit before his sciatica acted up. No one saved me a spot at the center. That, of course, was for Alex now. Then came the moment. Mom stood up, clinking her glass. "All right, everyone, settle down." The room hushed. All eyes turned to her. She looked around with that practiced smile she always wore at church bake sales. "Before we eat," she announced, "I think it would be nice to have a few words." She turned towards me, and for a fleeting second, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe she'll let me. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but sharp, "don't embarrass yourself like last year. Just let your brother lead the prayer." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face. A few chuckles rippled through the room. Alex stood up, already raising his glass. I sat there, frozen, hands in my lap, fingers curled tight. Heat crawled up my neck. And still, I said nothing. Not yet. Not until dessert. Not until I brought out the box they'd made me swear I'd never open. If you'd watched me then, you probably wouldn't have seen much. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded, like an intern corrected for speaking out of turn. But inside, something irrevocably cracked. I stared at my plate as Alex mumbled through a prayer that sounded suspiciously copied from a meme. Everyone roared with laughter at his closing line, "And may the turkey be less dry than last year." Aunt Sharon clapped. Uncle David let out one of those loud, throat-clearing guffaws he used to feign amusement. Even Dad chuckled, barely glancing up from his wine glass. And me? I just sat there, slowly lifting my glass of wine to my lips, praying the bitterness would drown out the one swelling in my chest. This is the table I bought, I thought. The roof over our heads is mine. The car Mom brags about, I made the last 3 payments on it. The kitchen she's cooking in, I paid for that renovation when the tiles cracked. I paid for this life, and I was still expected to stay quiet. Dinner carried on as if nothing had happened. Plates passed. Compliments flew like confetti. "Oh, the stuffing's amazing, Eleanor." "Alex, that story about your boss, hilarious." "Ethan, can you pass the butter?" It was like I wasn't really there as a person, just a utility. The guy who brought the pie. The guy who signed the checks. Alex sat across from me, leaning back, hands behind his head like he owned the place. He had this smug little grin that only I seemed to notice. He knew. He knew Mom's words had stung, and he liked it. Every now and then, he'd glance over, raising his eyebrows, daring me to react. But I didn't. Not yet. After dinner, people drifted to the living room. The TV flickered on. Dad flipped between football and a rerun of some decade-old sitcom. I started clearing plates because, of course, I did. No one offered to help. No one said thank you. I just gathered them quietly, one by one, stacking them on the counter as voices and laughter filled the other room. That's when I overheard it. I hadn't meant to, I wasn't even eavesdropping. But the kitchen isn't far from the hallway, and I guess they thought I couldn't hear over the faucet. Alex's voice, low but smug, "You think he's going to make a scene?" "Mom, no. He knows better. He always acts like he's above it." "Mom, Eleanor, I mean, the guy's got to stick up for his dad." Then, all right, enough. He just takes everything so personally. For heaven's sake, he bought the house. You'd think he'd be humble about it. Alex laughed.
Yeah.
I mean, congrats on doing the bare minimum, right? Then someone, probably Aunt Sharon, chimed in, at least you still show up, Alex. Some people think money's enough. I stood there, a plate in my hands, staring at the backsplash tiles I'd paid to install. I felt cold. Not angry yet, just cold, hollowed out, like all the pieces of me that used to care were slipping through a crack I couldn't close. I finished the dishes, dried my hands, and stepped into the hallway with a fake smile, as if I hadn't heard a word. Who wants pie? I asked. My voice sounded far away, even to me. Mom lit up. Oh, did you bring that caramel apple one again? From last year? I did. Good boy, she said. Good boy. I almost laughed. Like a Labrador. I sliced the pie, plated it, handed it out like a waiter at some family-friendly restaurant chain. No one noticed the slight tremor in my hands. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. Either way, it didn't matter. I sat back down with a cup of coffee and forced myself to chew and swallow. Then came the moment. Alex, grinning like the sun was stuck behind his teeth, said, "Hey, Mom. Should I show everyone the video?" She blinked. What video? You know, the one from San Diego. Karaoke night. Oh, Lord, yes. She laughed. Everyone has to see it. Ethan, you've got to hear this. Alex doing a Bohemian Rhapsody, in this tiny bar, people cheering like he was Freddie Mercury reincarnated. He was already pulling out his phone. I sat there, sipping coffee, nodding politely while he connected it to the TV. The video played. Alex, on a cheap stage, drunk and wobbling, slurring through the lyrics. The room roared with laughter. Someone clapped. Dad said, "That's my boy. That's my boy." I'd heard those words before. Once at my college graduation, Dad had said them with a tone of surprise, like he wasn't sure how I'd pulled it off. Alex finished with a bow and a loud burp. Everyone cheered. I stared at my fork. Then, out of nowhere, Alex looked at me. You should come next time, Ethan. Loosen up a little. Maybe someone would actually cheer for you. I looked up slowly. The whole room went still for half a second, like they weren't sure if they were supposed to laugh. Then Mom chuckled, "Oh, Alex, don't be mean." But she was smiling. That was when something shifted. Not dramatically, not like lightning and thunder, just a click. A gear turning. A decision settling in my bones. I stood up. Be right back. Got something in the car. Mom waved me off. Don't take too long. We're doing family pictures. I walked out into the cold November air. My shoes crunched on the gravel of the driveway I'd repaved last spring. I opened the trunk, reached in, and pulled out the box. It was old cardboard, faded duct tape along the edges. One side, marked in red Sharpie, "Do not open." I hadn't touched it in 10 years. Back when I first left home, Mom gave it to me. She looked nervous, which was rare for her. "These are just old documents," she'd said. "Don't throw them away, but please don't go through them. It's not for you. Just store it." And I did, for a while. But years later, curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. I read everything. Then I resealed it, promising myself I'd never bring it up, never throw it in their faces. I told myself I was better than that, that no good came from stirring up family ghosts. But tonight? Tonight, I wasn't feeling generous. I carried the box back inside. Everyone was still laughing about the karaoke. Someone had opened another bottle of wine. Alex was leaning over his girlfriend's shoulder, showing her pictures on his phone. Dad was half asleep in the recliner. I walked into the room, held up the box. "Hey." Everyone turned. Mom frowned. "What's that?" I looked at her. "You remember this?" She stared at it like it was a snake. "Where did you get that?" You gave it to me, I said. Told me never to open it. Well, yes, but that was a long time ago. It was, I said, setting it on the coffee table. I didn't open it yet. I just let it sit there, like a bomb, ticking. Alex snorted. What is it? Your old high school love letters? No, I said, smiling for the first time that night. It's the reason we're all sitting in this house. It's the reason you still call this place Mom's home. It's the reason I stopped trying to explain myself years ago. The room went quiet. Mom stood up. Ethan, I don't think this is the time. Why not? I said, louder than I meant to. Why isn't this the time? You had time for videos, for jokes. You had time to tell me not to embarrass myself. You had time to laugh behind my back about how I'm just the guy with the wallet. Dad finally stirred. Ethan, don't start something. I'm not starting anything, I said. I'm finishing it. My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. I could see Mom's eyes darting toward the box. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. Alex rolled his eyes, clearly thinking I was making a scene for attention. He had no idea. Inside this box, I said, are documents, letters, agreements, bank statements. Things you hoped I'd never see, things I wasn't supposed to know. Mom's voice trembled. Please don't do this. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the power in the room. I'm not opening it, I said. Not yet. Alex laughed. Oh my God, what is this? Some kind of Lifetime movie twist? I turned to him. You think I'm bluffing? He held up his hands, grinning. I think you need to chill, bro. And that's when I said it. The thing I didn't plan to say. The thing that changed everything. I know about the trust fund, Alex. The room froze. Every face turned toward me. Alex's smirk died on his lips. Mom went pale. Dad's mouth opened and closed like he forgot how to breathe, and I just stood there, feeling every second of silence stretch like a rubber band about to snap. I let the tension hang in the air because the betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was what came next. For a solid 5 seconds, you could hear the furnace humming. That's how quiet the room got after I said it. Not a fork clinked, not a cough, just the low metallic purr of warm air blowing through the vents in the walls. The ones I paid to insulate. I know about the trust fund, Alex, I repeated. Not to twist the knife, but because a part of me still couldn't believe I had to say it out loud. Alex blinked, then scoffed too fast. Dude, what are you even talking about? But his ears flushed red. He was always a terrible liar, especially when cornered. I looked over at Mom, who had one hand covering her mouth, the other trembling at her side. Her silence said more than anything Alex could try to deny. You really think I wouldn't find out? I continued, slower now, quieter. That a box full of just old papers wouldn't eventually catch my attention? You handed me the evidence, Mom. All these years, you counted on me being too loyal, too polite, too naive to ask questions. But the truth has a way of leaking. What truth? Alex laughed again, louder, looking around the room like someone would back him up. Seriously, what is he even saying? So, I turned to the room. Since we're all here, let's talk about it, I said, gesturing to the box. Inside are legal documents. A trust set up by Grandpa Daniel before he passed. One for each of us, Alex and me. Except mine was emptied out when I turned 20. Quietly. Legally. Because I gave permission, apparently. Meanwhile, Alex's account stayed untouched. It grew. It's still growing. A gasp came from Aunt Brenda. Uncle David shifted in his seat, suddenly finding interest in his shoelaces. The cousins looked around, their expressions flickering between confusion and awkward discomfort. Alex snapped. This is ridiculous. You don't know what you're talking about. But his voice cracked. I pulled out one of the envelopes from the box and held it up without opening it. This is your signature, Mom. You co-signed the withdrawal request with Dad. I was 19. You told me I was signing a lease document for my dorm. I didn't. Her voice trailed off. You did, I said, quieter now. I double-checked with the bank last year. Had the forms reviewed by a friend who's a lawyer. You cashed out my share of Grandpa's trust fund to cover the down payment on the lake house. The one Alex crashed his jet ski into and then sold behind your backs. More gasps. Alex flinched. Dad stood up, face beet red, but he didn't deny it. He didn't say a word. I never asked for anything, I said. Not when I found out. Not when I realized why you were so weird about that box. I swallowed it. Told myself it was just money, that maybe you needed it more than I did. So, I worked. I paid for college myself. I ate ramen and worked graveyard shifts while Alex partied with Grandpa's inheritance. Okay, you need to calm down, Dad finally said. This is not the time or the place. No, I raised an eyebrow. Seems like the perfect time. Everyone's here. Everyone who laughed when I was told not to embarrass myself. Everyone who watched me scrape mashed potatoes onto their plates while Alex showed off videos of himself drunk in San Diego. Alex's face was red now. You're seriously doing this over what? Some money you were never going to use anyway? That's ancient history. It's not about the money, I said, though I knew that was only half true. It's about what it meant. What it revealed. That you never saw me as a son, just a resource. That you trusted Alex with everything, including my share of the future, and left me to figure it out on my own. And when I made something of myself, you pretended like it was owed to you, like I was just fulfilling some debt. No one spoke for a long time. Then, Mom, eyes wet but voice sharp, said, we did what we had to do. That sentence broke something in me. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest, coldly, clinically honest. They had made a choice between sons, between futures, and they did what they had to do. I nodded. Okay, I said, picked up the box, tucked it under my arm, and walked out the door. No dramatic exit, no slamming, no tears, just silence. That was the last Thanksgiving I spent with my family. The first few weeks after that night were rough. Not in a soap opera way, no screaming matches, no lawsuits, but the quiet kind of rough. The kind where you wake up with phantom vibrations in your phone, half expecting a message that never comes. The kind where you instinctively grab 2 mugs for coffee before remembering no one's visiting today. The kind where you sit in your car outside your own house, hand frozen on the ignition, because part of you still wants to drive over and talk it out. But I didn't. I didn't reach out, and they didn't either. At first, I thought maybe I'd cave. Maybe Christmas would roll around and I'd show up with a bottle of wine and an apology I didn't mean, just to keep the peace. But the more I sat with the silence, the more I realized how long I'd mistaken absence for peace. Just because things were quiet didn't mean they were okay. So, I started over. It wasn't some grand cinematic rebuild. No Rocky montage or inspirational music. Just small, intentional things. I cleared out the guest bedroom, not because I expected guests, but because I realized I'd been keeping it ready for family who never truly stayed. I replaced old framed photos in the hallway with pictures from solo trips, Alaska, Rome, that hiking trail in Colorado I nearly turned back on but didn't. I started therapy, which, honestly, I should have done years ago. I didn't go to blame anyone or unleash my bitterness. I went because I needed to understand why it had taken me so long to draw boundaries. Why I still felt like a traitor for standing up for myself. Your family raised you to believe that love is conditional, my therapist said in our 3rd session. It's not your fault that it feels unnatural to protect yourself, but it's your job now to learn. That hit hard. So, I started learning. I read, journaled, went to those awkward social mixers where adults try to make friends. I joined a rock climbing gym, not because I liked heights, but because the idea of failing over and over in public felt strangely therapeutic. I fell a lot, but I got better. I got stronger. Business-wise, things exploded. I don't know if it was the anger that fueled me or the clarity from finally dropping my family's emotional weight, but I threw myself into work, landed massive clients, rebranded the company, hired a full-time staff. For the first time, I wasn't just getting by, I was thriving. Not to prove anything to anyone, just because it felt good to finally invest in myself. People noticed. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years started reaching out, not because of the drama, but because I finally had room for them. I had time, energy, a personality no longer filtered through layers of people-pleasing. One night, maybe 6 months after that Thanksgiving, I got a text from Alex. "Hey, heard you're killing it. Congrats, man. Proud of you." No apology. No mention of what happened. I didn't respond. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived from Mom. She didn't say she was sorry. She just wrote, "I miss you. Things haven't been the same without you here. We didn't know how to handle everything. Maybe we made mistakes, but you're still family. Please don't stay away forever." It sat on my counter for days. Then one night, I poured myself a drink, sat at the kitchen table, and read it again and again, searching for remorse, understanding, even guilt. But all I saw was regret for the consequences, not for the actions. She missed the benefits of me, the presence, the structure, the financial fallback, but not me. So, I didn't reply. And yet, even with that distance, I felt better. Lighter. Lonelier, sure, but also real, honest. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was borrowing someone else's role in a family play where my character wasn't even given lines. I was Ethan, 32, independent, scarred, but healing, quietly building a life that no longer bent itself around people who didn't see my worth until it was too late. And then, just when I thought the past was fully behind me, a knock came at my door. It was my cousin Caleb, holding a flash drive, looking nervous. "I think you should see this," he said. What was on that drive? That's when everything changed again. Caleb stood on my porch like a kid caught sneaking a cookie. Shoulders hunched, eyes darting, the flash drive in his hand trembling like it weighed 50 pounds. It was a warm spring evening, the kind where the air hums with possibility, but I could feel the storm behind his eyes. I hadn't seen him in months. He was one of the few family members I tolerated, quiet, observant, didn't get drunk and slap your back. He was also the only one who'd sent me a message after Thanksgiving, a simple, "Hope you're all right," that I never answered. I stepped aside and let him in without a word. My cat, Leo, darted past his legs, unimpressed. We sat in the kitchen. No wine this time, just water and a thick silence between us. Caleb kept looking at the flash drive on the table like it might explode. "What is it?" I asked, my voice low, controlled. He hesitated. "Look, before I show you this, you need to know I didn't go looking for it." It landed in my lap. I raised an eyebrow. "Okay. You know I do freelance IT work, right?" I nodded, vaguely remembering it from a family barbecue a few years back, sandwiched between my uncle's racist jokes and Aunt Brenda's tirade about gluten. "Well, a couple weeks ago, Alex called me. Said he needed help recovering files from an old laptop. Urgent, but hush-hush. Offered me $500 just to take a look." I blinked. "Alex offered you $500 to look at a laptop?" Caleb nodded.
Yeah.
Which was already suspicious, but whatever. Easy money. I go over, do my thing. Turns out the laptop isn't even his. It's your dad's old one. Dusty, probably hadn't been turned on in years. Alex said something about needing a copy of an old resume. I thought that was weird, but whatever. He paused, reached for his water, but didn't drink. While I'm digging through files, I find this folder. Hidden, but not well. It's labeled Contracts, DC. I click on it. First thing I see is your name. Then another file. And another. And then I see documents with my name. My dad's name. I frowned. Your dad. He nodded.
Yeah,
Apparently my dad co-signed something. Some kind of backdated agreement that transferred portions of Grandpa's assets to guess who. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Alex, Caleb said. Specifically to a shell LLC that Alex controls. And there's more. Tax evasion schemes, undocumented transfers, a whole trail of forged or manipulated paperwork. I copied everything, finished the job like nothing happened. Took my payment and left. I sat back. Cold crept up my spine. Why are you telling me this now? Caleb finally looked me in the eye. Because I thought you deserved to know. And because I think I might be on some of those papers, too. I think Alex used me. Used all of us as names to spread liability. If this stuff ever blew up legally, a bunch of us could get caught in the crossfire without even knowing we were involved. I stared at the flash drive. And you're sure it's all real? He slid it toward me. I triple-checked. And Ethan, it's bad. This isn't just favoritism anymore. It's theft, fraud, manipulation on a scale I didn't think Alex was capable of. And your parents? They're in deep. I didn't touch the flash drive yet. My hands were steady, but my heart was hammering like a war drum. So, what do you want me to do with this? I asked. Caleb looked away. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants to burn it. But another part of me, the part that remembers every time our family acted like Alex was made of gold and we were made of cardboard? That part wants justice. Or revenge. Or both. I nodded slowly. We sat there in silence for a long time. When he left, I walked him to the door. He stopped on the porch, turned back. Just be careful, all right? Alex is smarter than he looks, and he's not above playing dirty. I know, I said. He learned from the best. For the next 2 days, I didn't eat much, didn't sleep. I was back in that numb, detached state I knew too well. But this time, it wasn't from grief. It was clarity. Focus. I went through every file on the drive. Hundreds of documents. Some were clumsy, like Alex thought renaming a PDF would make it disappear. Others were meticulous, even professional. There were fake consulting fees funneled through family members, bogus investment reports, bank transfers timed to coincide with vacations my parents claimed on tax forms. But the crown jewel was a string of emails. Emails between Mom Eleanor and Alex, between Dad Daniel and a shady accountant, even one between Alex and some guy named D at C, that, based on the signature and routing IP, turned out to be a burner address Dad used when he didn't want his business traced. They weren't just hiding the trust fund. They were gutting it. Selling off assets, laundering the money through Alex's fake companies, siphoning chunks into accounts registered overseas. Grandpa Daniel's legacy, meant for both of us, was being chewed up and swallowed while they smiled at Thanksgiving like nothing was wrong. But here's the thing about growing up in a family where you're constantly sidelined, you learn to observe, to adapt, to read people. And I realized I didn't just have evidence. I had leverage. The kind that doesn't just shake a family, it collapses it. But I didn't want to explode a bomb for nothing. I wanted precision, timing, maximum impact. Not just for justice, but to finally show them who they'd overlooked. So, I made a plan. First, I called Sophia. She's a real estate attorney I've worked with for years. Sharp, discreet, and loyal as hell since I saved her firm from a PR disaster. I didn't give her details at first, just asked her to look into the deed on my parents' house, the one I technically owned, but allowed them to manage for tax purposes. She confirmed what I suspected. They'd filed a quitclaim deed behind my back, fraudulently transferring ownership to Alex. That was step 1. Next, I contacted an old college friend, Michael, who now works for a local investigative news outlet. I didn't give him the documents yet. Just teased a potential story, old money, betrayal, a family dynasty with dark secrets. He bit immediately. I told him to wait for a follow-up. Then I reached out to Caleb again. Nate, I said over the phone, how do you feel about being part of something big? There was a long pause, then a single word, I'm in. We met the next day. I laid it out. Not just revenge, but a surgical strike. I wanted to expose Alex publicly, strategically, but more importantly, I wanted to make my parents choose. Not between sons, but between comfort and truth. He nodded, a slow smile creeping across his face. So, what's the play? Simple, I said. We invite them to dinner. I reserved a private dining room at a sleek restaurant downtown. Not fancy enough to raise suspicion, but exclusive enough to make them feel important. I used my assistant's number to call Mom and invite them all, Alex, my parents, even Aunt Brenda and Uncle David. Told them it was a belated birthday dinner. I knew they'd come. They always showed up when there was free food and a chance to feel celebrated. Meanwhile, Caleb helped me quietly reach out to the rest of the cousins. Some were wary, some were angry. One even cried on the phone when I told her what I'd found. The pattern had been there all along, Alex getting mysterious cash infusions, managing properties he never paid for, dangling promises of family investments that never materialized. All they needed was proof. I gave them that. And then I gave them a job, show up to the dinner, I said. Dress nice. Smile, but don't say a word until I give the signal. When I do, you'll know what to do. They agreed. Even the quiet ones. Especially the quiet ones. The night of the dinner, I wore a navy suit. Nothing flashy, understated, well-fitted, confidence in fabric form. Caleb was already there when I arrived, seated near the far end of the long mahogany table, sipping water like he'd never touched anything stronger in his life. The others trickled in, cousins, uncles, family friends looped in at the last minute. Alex was the last to arrive. He strolled in 10 minutes late, wearing a smug grin and a leather jacket that screamed midlife crisis, despite being only 30. He slapped my shoulder. Look at you, Mr. Success. Going to give us all stock tips? I smiled. Something like that. Mom Eleanor looked radiant, beaming, dressed in gold. Dad Daniel was stiff beside her, eyes scanning the room like he expected to be ambushed. He wasn't wrong. Dinner began. Drinks flowed. Polite conversation hummed around us like static. For a while, it almost felt normal. Almost. Then, after the plates were cleared and the dessert menus appeared, I stood. Everyone quieted. Thank you all for coming, I said. It means a lot to see everyone here, especially after a tough year. I looked directly at my parents. You know, for a long time I thought family was about sacrifice. About giving more than you receive because love meant doing whatever it took to keep people safe. Happy. Comfortable. Some of them nodded. Mom smiled, sensing a compliment coming. But now I know love without honesty is just manipulation. And comfort built on lies is just a house of cards. I set my glass down. Caleb reached into his bag. So, let's talk about the truth. That's when I clicked the remote and the projector screen behind me came to life. And what showed on it? That's where the real show began. The screen flickered, casting a soft white glow across the stunned faces around the table. The restaurant staff had dimmed the overhead lights at my quiet request, only heightening the drama. Forks froze midair. Glasses hovered near lips. For the first time in my life, I had their complete, undivided attention. Not because they wanted to give it, but because I'd finally given them no choice. The first image was a scanned copy of a document dated almost 15 years ago. The trust paperwork. Grandpa Daniel's signature at the bottom. A clear split, 50/50 to Alex and Ethan J. Caldwell. I let it linger for a beat. Then the screen transitioned to the next page. A withdrawal form. My name again, but this time my signature was sloppily forged, co-signed by Eleanor Caldwell and Daniel J. Caldwell. Dated 3 months after I left for college. I turned to Mom, rigid in her chair, lips pressed into a tight, painful line. You remember this, Mom? I asked calmly. You handed me that manila envelope and said it was a lease from my dorm. You watched me sign a blank form because I trusted you. The screen changed again, a grainy black and white scan of a wire transfer from my trust fund account to a private LLC under Alex's name. Don't worry, I said before anyone could object. That's just the tip of the iceberg. What followed was a carefully edited 15-minute presentation, part documentary, part exposé, compiled by Caleb and me over the past few weeks. A tight narrative of betrayal, every receipt, every fake company, every email, every name. I'd redacted some more sensitive material involving cousins or extended family. I wasn't here to burn everyone down, but I made sure every piece that tied Alex, Mom, and Dad to the fraud was crystal clear. The final slide, a screenshot of Dad's burner email address, d@steve.caldwell.finance@protonmail.com, and a reply from Alex, laughing about how Ethan still hasn't figured it out. The room erupted, not in chaos, but in stunned silence. Then a low murmur as cousins leaned in, whispering to each other, eyes wide. Aunt Brenda turned to Mom, her face so pale she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Uncle David, normally the loudest man in any room, was dead silent, his expression twisted with something between horror and guilt. Alex stood up fast, his chair screeching. Okay, this is a joke, he said, eyes darting wildly. None of this means anything. Anyone can fake this crap. You seriously brought everyone here to show off your little PowerPoint? I didn't flinch. Actually, I brought everyone here to return something. Something I took back from you last week. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. It stopped in front of Mom with a quiet thud. She didn't touch it. That's the corrected deed to the house, I said. Filed, notarized, and legally transferred back to me. Turns out filing a quitclaim deed without the legal owner's consent, especially when forged, is a criminal offense. But I decided not to press charges. Not yet. Dad looked like he'd swallowed a stone. You had no right. I cut him off. No right? You gave up the right to honesty a long time ago. I paid for that house. You tried to steal it. Be grateful I'm giving you 30 days to move out. Gasps. Cousins covered their mouths. A glass tipped over. No one touched their dessert. And Alex, I added, turning to him, I've already submitted everything from the flash drive to a forensic accountant. He's prepping a report for the IRS and the state auditor. You know that lake house you sold for cash after wrecking it? That'll be the first breadcrumb they follow. Alex's face contorted into something between a sneer and a pout. You'd really do that? You'd ruin your own family over some trust fund? You ruined it, I said. I'm just shining a light on the wreckage. Caleb stood then, quietly, calmly. I'd like to add that I've also removed Alex from all 3 of the tech investment groups. He used my name to access them. My lawyer's filing a civil claim this week for identity misuse. The hits kept coming. Aunt Brenda turned on Mom. You told me there was nothing left. You said Dad went broke before the trust could be divided. You let me cash out my retirement early to help Alex with that startup, the one that never existed. Mom didn't speak. Her eyes were glazed. I think she was in shock. And still, I wasn't done. One more thing, I said, reaching into my jacket. I pulled out a printed invitation, thick cardstock, gold foil trim. Next month, I'm launching a foundation in Grandpa Daniel's name, the Caldwell Legacy Trust. Scholarships for first-gen college students, financial literacy programs for at-risk youth, and a digital archive of every donation made in his name. Transparent. Accountable. Real. I walked over and placed the invitation in front of Mom. You always said you missed the way Thanksgiving used to feel, I said softly. This is what gratitude looks like. Not a seat at the table you stole, but building a new table entirely. I turned to leave. Alex shouted something too fast, too incoherent to matter. Something about defamation, about lawyers. But no one stood with him. No one followed him out when he stormed from the room. Mom and Dad remained seated, motionless. I didn't expect them to chase me. I didn't even look back, because I was done. The fallout was swift. Within a month, Alex was under investigation. The shell companies unraveled quickly. Turns out, when you're arrogant enough to name one of your offshore accounts, Big Dog LLC, it doesn't take long for accountants to sniff out the fraud. His assets were frozen. His accounts flagged. His condo in San Diego, the one he bragged about to all our cousins, was seized for investigation. He tried to spin it, of course, claimed it was all a family misunderstanding. But with so many relatives filing civil complaints and the media starting to poke around thanks to Michael's now published article, his denials didn't carry weight anymore. Mom and Dad quietly moved out of the house. No note, no apology, just a key left in the mailbox and a voicemail I never listened to. They moved in with Aunt Carol in Arizona. I know this only because Caleb told me. He's kept tabs. Says they don't go out much anymore. As for me, I did what I promised. The Caldwell Legacy Trust launched with a 6-figure endowment, funded entirely from my own pocket. We awarded our first 3 scholarships this past fall. I attend every interview personally. I shake their hands. I hear their stories. And every time, I think of Grandpa Daniel, not my parents, not Alex, but the man who once told me at age 12, you don't need to be loud to lead. Just be the one who holds the light when everyone else is lost. I held the light, and I walked myself out of the dark. I still celebrate Thanksgiving. Not with family, not in that house, but with friends, real ones. People who show up because they want to, not because they expect something. We laugh, we eat, we toast, and sometimes when the table gets quiet for a moment, when the candles flicker and the air smells like cinnamon and roasted garlic, I sit back and feel it. Peace earned, not inherited. And that is how I finally took my seat at the table. What would you have done if your family chose betrayal over truth?